Welcome all. Wave if you can hear me. Great. Okay. I've had mute problems. I'm going to wait a couple of seconds to give other people a chance to join us. But thank you. I appreciate your coming to, and then there's other sessions I've heard about. It keeps coming down to communications in so many ways about getting the Rotary story out. So I'm delighted to have you with me here today. I think we're at 11:01, so let's get started. My name is Nina Trasoff. I'm in the Tucson Club, the Downtown Club, and I am a recovering journalist, and also for 3 decades did corporate communications as a way of earning a living. Now retired, mostly, except for doing things like this and doing what I used to get paid for free for groups that I really passionately care about, which is fun. So I'm going to go to the presentation that I've put together and share my screen. Did that work? Yes. Good. Okay. So I just have to figure out how I move through the presentation. Okay. That's how I do it. Okay. Okay. All right. Telling the Rotary story. From whatever group you were in, you know that we have amazing stories to tell. And it's a matter of how we get that out. And it's hard. But one of the things in each of your local areas, know what your local media is, who they are, follow what they're doing so that you know whom to reach out to. You explore every option. Here in Tucson, you have the Star News and Features. Star has a calendar. There's radio and talk show programs, TV talk programs. But you need to look at what is available. The digital news is the new big thing, and it's incredibly important. In one of the sessions I was in, I think it was Wendy, was talking about 3 local papers in the Saddlebrook area. And you're often going to have more luck getting coverage in these smaller regional papers than you will in the larger papers, simply by dint of what their coverage is and what their focus is. So the more you, and by the way, feel free to ask a question, unmute yourselves and ask me a question at any point during this. But I can't undersell the importance of knowing what it is, who it is that's covering your kind of thing. And who is a features person, who's going to care about education for the exchange students, who's going to care about a service project for peace and care and understanding in the world, who is going to want to do something bilingually. There are Spanish language papers. There are papers that are geared to the African American community. So really take the time to see what it is that's available and who's covering what, so that when you reach out to them, you will know who they are and know how to target your ask to what they're interested in, because that's bottom line. We all know that what we're doing is important in our community, but how do we help somebody else? One thing that I will share with you, back in the dark ages when I was on Channel 9, and dark ages, both because that was 40 some odd years ago, and also because everything was paper. You know, we had a ticker tape. You hear the machines from Associated Press and UPI coming on and beeping when there was a big story, but also because each morning that I went in, I would have a stack of 3, 4, 5 inches of papers that were all people asking for coverage of something. And you had to sift through that. And nowadays, reporters have even more because it's coming in electronically. So it's what can you do to grab the attention of somebody? And one of the first things I would look for is a hook, something that really would tell a story. In my medium of television, I was looking for visuals. And so as you're looking to put together a story or an ask or reach out to somebody, think visual. Even if it's a newspaper, there are opportunities for photographs. but think human is the biggest thing, and think common denominator. Why does it matter in this community, in whatever community you're in? Why is this story important? And actually, I'm going to go ahead and then come back to this for a second, because I think, no, where am I? There we go. These are the things, and then I'll come back to the things to think about. But I know as soon as somebody had something in what they sent to me that said, we're seeking publicity, we're raising funds, we need your help. Nope, it just got eliminated, because I was a news operation. I needed to know, why is it important? And so these other approaches of, we're making a difference in people's lives, we're helping, and then have something that speaks to something that's important to the community, that makes a difference. And again, there are no hard and fast rules. Again, I was really impressed with Saddlebrook getting coverage all the time. And in a smaller local paper, you can do that. But I would really urge you to think about the things that do make a difference. And that's where I was here, of finding the hook. What is newsworthy? And again, you have to look at lead time. You want to give, if it's a feature story, you want to give them flexible time that you can do it immediately, or it doesn't, you don't want to call somebody today and say, I need a story done tomorrow. But you start working with the reporter and establish the rapport and let them know what it is that's important. When I would write news releases, as when I crossed the line and started doing communications, I would write a news release as if it were a news story. Something that starts off with a good lead that gets people interested in what's going on. In this case, your target is the reporter as opposed to the general public. But I must tell you, some of the times when I would send out news releases, smaller newspapers would use them as a story, just as I presented it to them, because I would have quotes from people. I would have a really good hook about why this story matters and why it's important to that constituency. The things at the bottom here, yes, you do have to be aware that sometimes there can be negatives, and sometimes bad things will happen even in the best of clubs. So just be aware of any possible negatives. And the other thing, this is just one thing I tell anybody I'm dealing with who deals with the media, you never go off the record, because you never say anything to a reporter, no matter how honest they are and well-intentioned. You never know where notes will go or whatever, or that they'll forget that part was off the record and this part is something we want to talk to you about. So anything you say, just know that it's fair game. It's something that you want to be sure that you want people to know that. Also exploring other forms of outreach. There's so many of them now, and I've heard several clubs talk about this in other sessions, and it's wonderful. Look at how you can reach people. Social media, certainly, Facebook, blogs, all of that stuff. And also look at your own club. When something's going to happen in my club that I want to get out from my old days, I have 5,000 friends on Facebook. Your club, if you can do things to help your club get word out to their own constituencies, you're going to be reaching out to different businesses, different social strata. You're going to be reaching a whole bunch of people that news media won't even reach. And you're going to reach them in a more personal way through your members' Facebooks, blogs, emails. So don't overlook the importance of that as a way to get the story out. And sponsorships, where it's appropriate for what you're doing, try and get sponsorships for your projects. It not only helps with underwriting the cost of whatever project you're doing, whether it's a cleanup project or a social service project, whatever, but then they're going to want to let their constituencies know about what it is that they're sponsoring and why. So when you work with a sponsor, you want to not just be getting money, but also try and hook into their own constituencies, because that's another group that you'll be reaching out to. Things can go wrong. I just want to touch this very briefly. There's a whole other presentation on crisis management. And I will tell all of you, because I'm presuming those of you who are here in this session may have something to do with leadership or communications in your club. Things will happen, things do happen, and you want to know how to handle that. And so I am making an offer to each of you and your clubs. If you come up with a crisis situation, call me. Let me talk you through it. Let me help you with a specific thing, this specific situation. But the rule about never going off the record is even more important then. Also, it's not a rule, but it's a suggestion that if you get a call about something that's negative, find out the deadline for the reporter, never say no comment, but also ask if you let me get back to you. I need to get more information for you. That gives you time to breathe and figure out what it is that you do want to say. First thing, never, ever, 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 ever tell a lie, because you lose all credibility and they'll find out anyway, beyond the fact that it's morally wrong. And our first thing is it the truth? So kind of important. But that also doesn't mean, conversely, that you have to tell somebody everything you know. You need to have context. You need to know how you want to present this. And that's why stepping back and getting some time can be very helpful. Okay. So that's the basics that I just wanted to walk you through, of looking at some simple things about don't ask for publicity. You will turn off their mind and their interest, but do find that hook. And so what I'd like to do instead right now is just to find out, what kinds of things are you dealing with? What are you trying to promote? Do you have questions that you would like answered? Jennifer, did you have your hand up?
Yes. So my challenge is I'm the media chair for TwoBack, and I was a journalist for 24 years. So I have experience there, but it's the posting to Facebook. We do a lot of activities that are related to education and the youth, like at the Model Youth Center. It's the permission thing I'm afraid of posting pictures of children without getting each permission. That's the challenge.
It is a challenge. And perhaps can you come up with a different way, a different kind of visual, or photos where you're over the shoulder of the children involved and focusing on the Rotarian who's working with them?
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, you could go into blurring. There are technologies that allow you to blur a person's face, but then it looks like it's a criminal and you're trying to hide their face.
Right.
So you can have very creative ways of going over the shoulder and focusing on your Rotarian and having the backs of kids' heads that shows their interest, shows their involvement. And then when you have larger groups, like Ryla had a presentation and they had this great photograph of everybody who participated in the presentation. When you have large activities like that, see if you can develop and talk to, I'm not on the legal side, but think if you can get a release.
Okay. Parents,
it's always better when you're doing something like that, if you can get releases, because it gives you the freedom to post so much more. But I love it that you're using Facebook to promote those things. But my suggestion would be that to add another step to that, which is doing outreach to your members, asking each of them to share whatever it is that you've done on their own Facebooks.
Okay.
Because
good
again,
idea.
That gets everything spread out into new constituencies.
Okay.
And so is that applicable only to children? Or anybody that's not part of your, we posted pictures of events at the Children's Museum. We did an Earth Day and there are kids in there. So I'm wondering if I should go back and delete them.
Well, the rules today have gotten so much looser because of all the social media, but with kids, I would be very careful of having any child's picture up on Facebook. I think adults are fair game, but I would be loath to put up things with kids' photos where they're identifiable, because there are so many things we can't know about.
Right.
So, yeah, I would be careful with that.
Okay.
Nina, also
Yes.
I had a question, and it has to do with the kinds of permission. Sometimes people have active, like Marcos just said, they have a release for pictures taken at Ryla. But there's also the kind of permission that says your child will be photographed unless we hear from you. It's kind of a negative thing. And my understanding is that that's not really good legally, but sometimes people use it. It's like, you know, unless we hear from you, we will assume that you give us your permission to have your child included or to have you involved. It is a question, isn't it, about the age, how old? What about those adults? There's a lot of questions out there. It's hard to get those specific. Yes, you may take my picture. Anyway, question.
That is really, yes, that's a real challenge. From what I have seen, and I am not a lawyer, I am not a lawyer. So you may want to talk to somebody who actually knows what the legalities are. But as a Rotarian, I would want us to be respectful of people and protective of people, and especially children. And that's why I really believe that you don't put a kid's face up unless you don't have an opt-out, you have an opt-in.
Okay. Good.
That would be my suggestion. With adults, I think it's much easier to just let it slide. And you might have something posted at an event saying, we're taking pictures and we'll be putting them on Facebook. Let us know if you don't want to be included. So that you have something there that they know that they can opt out. But kids, yeah, I would protect them.
Okay.
Nancy.
I'd just like to say, if I could offer one, I think we have to get the releases, and I'm scared to death about assuming something on my own that turns out to be wrong. You know, the world is a kind of a strange place now, and there are ways around showing children's pictures that you don't have releases for. For example, we have an Interact club, and we get the releases at the beginning, but then I was going to send a picture out this week in our newsletter, and I emailed the coordinator, and he said, well, we hadn't updated the releases. So, you know, we know to get them. They do expire. You can't assume that they're all okay. And it scares me to death. I think we have to have the releases. So that's the way we're operating. And that constricts what we can do or restricts what we can do with the pictures.
Yeah, you raise really excellent points. And again, that's why I'm thinking we maybe as a district need to think about, and I'll talk to Don about this, about getting a legal opinion so that we all know ground rules, and maybe we all have a release that would be something that we share.
That'd be great, Nina.
Okay, I will talk to Don about that. But thank you. You raise, Joe, you raise it's a very good point. I mean, the other thing you can do in the meanwhile is when you have a photo of a kid, and they may have had a photo release, but you're worried about whether it's still good. I'd get in touch with the parents of that child and say, we want to feature your kid and we want to do this. Is that okay? And get it. And writing nowadays could be an email. You could talk to them and then follow it up with an email confirming, thank you so much. We're delighted you're going to let us use your child's face in this post about the great stuff that he was doing or whatever. So those kinds of things, I think, can be very helpful. Nancy, you had a question?
No, it's not a question. It's what we would do in our club with the Sierra Vista Rotary Club with our dictionary projects. I would always talk to the teacher. The teacher always knew which child signed releases and could take their pictures. If there was any question, I did just take the backs of their heads.
Great.
And ask them specifically, can I put this on our Facebook page? We won't do close-ups of any child. And they would, 9 times out of 10, they would always answer yes. And another organization that I was involved in where we did a student poetry contest, we had to make sure legally that we had a release signed by every parent, because we would take their pictures, it would be put in a book that would be published. And if we did not have that release, regardless of how well that child scored on the poetry contest, we could not release their picture at all. We would not put it on our book. So it is so important to have a release when there's children involved. And even if I'm out at our 4th of July, I'm just scanning, I make sure I do not zoom into any children unless I've talked with the parent or it's at a distance. That's it.
Yeah, that I,
just
again,
can't
I
take
will,
the rely.
I will talk with Don about having a standard release that Rotary District can use. But keep in mind also pictures and names.
Right.
And when you have a contest like that, you may want to, again, this will be legal, but you may want on your entry form to have something there that says it is okay to use my child's image and or name with separate boxes for that, for each one. Because it's a strange world. Yes, John.
So I'm just wondering how far this liability and release spreads. For example, we have a whole library of pictures of our club doing activities. Okay, a lot of them have kids in them. Can we show those at meetings? We can't put them online. Can we put them in our newsletter? Obviously can't put them in the newsletter because that's online, right? Are we allowed to show those slides at meetings in front of 60 members?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't answer that. I'm going to put together a list for Don. I wish you were. Oh, there's Don. Hi there. We're coming up with a
There
bunch.
has been one already.
Where did you just
A
join?
new
Don?
situation.
No, I've been on. I got bounced off and came back on.
Okay, did you hear? I mean, so these are questions that we may want to do something as a district, getting a release that so we have policies that deal with kids and even adults to provide guidance to the clubs.
Well,
Yeah,
and Don,
two quick
we
comments
should-
about that. Go ahead, Joe.
we should consider the two sides of this. What are the guidelines for what we can and when we need a release? And two, what does our insurance policy cover if we get sued?
Well, those are my 2 points. Thank you. First is that we will put something together at the district level and make that available, and perhaps even send it out to everybody. The second does tie into how not to get in trouble. And Michael Drake, who many of you know, will actually be doing a program at our district conference in October about that, because you have these issues that you've been bringing up and some others about the inappropriate or illegal use of copyrights or copyrighted pictures, images, etc. And that's a big issue. And there are trolls out there looking for clubs and other organizations that are in violation and then suing them. And we have had Rotary clubs held liable for that. So those are all excellent issues, and the district will follow up to assist clubs with this.
Thank you, Don. Thelma, you had a question or something you
Yes.
wanted to add?
Well, I was just making a comment. We have a movie night for all the kids on the north end. And what we do as far as pictures, we just take the backs of their heads. We do not take any of the faces at all, because we know, with me being an educator, you have to have everything signed and delivered. So yeah, so I was just letting you know what we do at
Okay.
our movie night with the kids. Thank you.
So we will follow up on that, and I will put my email, which is just my first name at my last name.com. But I'll take a break and put it in chat at some point so that you can have that. So that, and again, the offer about any help with crisis things that do come up, please do feel free to get in touch with me.
Thank you.
So any questions though about how to get the publicity, how to find that hook, how to target a reporter or an idea?
Well, I'd like to say Barbara Barr's on here, and I think she's just as expert as we have at the club level. And she's in our club, Barbara Barr. And you know what? Most of the stories we've been able to get into the Saddlebrook papers, which we value that a lot. Barbara's told us early on, you don't need to pay for ads if you write a good story with a picture in it. That's what people in Saddlebrook want to look at. They will not read the ad, they will read the story. And we've had really good luck, and she's been an example of how to do that, of writing stories that somebody in Saddlebrook wants to read about. And if you're writing something that they think is interesting, then they'll read it, and the paper will put it in without, giving you any trouble.
Yeah, and again, thank you. That's a really good point you raised about not spending money on advertising, because people look at at least I do. I flip through the ads and I read the stories that are of interest to me. And in the smaller newspapers, you can do exactly what Joe was talking about. You can write your own story and get it in. I mentioned the fact that I did a news release and it was on the front page of the Nogales International about 30 years ago. But the papers will publish things if you write them not as publicity, or if you write them in a journalistic style. So actually the Star has printed 3 articles that I've written in the last, 8 months to a year, because there was something that was in the news and I was able to offer a personal perspective on them. And so that can work. And it's easier in the smaller markets, but that doesn't mean you should give up. Even with the Star, the Weekly, Luminaria is always looking for feature stories. That's a new digital online, and the Sentinel is digital newspaper that is looking for hard news stories. So read the paper and think about what is it that we're doing in our club that is newsworthy. My own club, we have the car show, and just the car show itself gets coverage because it's phenomenal. And then we have the money that we've been able to gather. But I am not big on just putting out something. We raised $200,000. No, this program in our last episode, and it was more than 200, but we were helping JTED get its new building. And so you focus on who's getting it, what the need is. And oh, by the way, Rotary Club of Tucson, we did this and we did this to help that happen. So, the stories that turn you off, the things that you look in the newspaper and you go, oh, that's not it's just flack. It's just noise. So we want to move beyond the noise.
Nina, one last just comment that I can remember doing forever. And that, as you said, where do we find those hooks? And I think looking at the newspaper and looking at the news, if it's in the news, if it's Ukraine, if it's a flood, if it's a fire, what are we doing in Rotary that's helping with those things? Tie it to the headlines and get it in there, not next month, but get it in there now. So be prepared to be looking for what you're doing, tie it to what already is in the news. That's a really great start to a hook, in my mind.
You're absolutely right.
I have something to raise there related is every editor of a magazine, say it's Tucson Lifestyle, they have a 12-month calendar of what the theme of that issue is. So if your event ties into their theme, the last Tucson Lifestyle was about the Humane Society and Dog of the Year. So, it could be anything. It could be the education issue. If your event ties into that, they already know what month that's going to run 1 year in advance.
That is a great suggestion. Really good. The other thing is, don't forget about letters to the editor. When you've got something, now there's 2 different kinds of publicity, I hate that term, that we're looking for. One is to let people know what we've done, and the other is to get people involved and help us with what we are doing. letters to the editor can be a great way of doing what we've done, of just saying, Tucson needs to know that, or what a successful thing they did, or something along those lines. And that's something you can submit to the opinion page at the Star or at other media. And don't forget radio. And if you want to get people out for things, again, The Hook. But Bill Buckmaster has a great show, and he loves doing things that highlight what people are doing in the community to make a difference. And that means having a half hour, 40 minutes of your day where you go and sit down with Bill and talk. Really look at those kinds of things too. There are a lot of smaller radio shows, even DJs on, I mean, I'm thinking classical because that's where my bent is, but if you had a concert coming in with some major performer who is raising funds for something that you're involved in, then you can get that information, and DJs need something to say between music. And sometimes if you can strike them right, they might say, well, here's a recording by so-and-so. Oh, and by the way, he's going to be in town for the Rotary, whatever. So just get creative about different ways to reach out, and also get it in tune with what do you read and why? I mean, when you go to an article in the newspaper, one of you, I can't remember who said this just before, think about, well, what are we doing that could get that kind of publicity? And how do you reach out to them? So other questions or thoughts? I don't want to duck out early.
Nina,
Yes.
Nina, it's Don. I have another couple of comments and maybe some assistance to offer too. You mentioned the radio, and certainly everyone in Southern Arizona, not just Tucson area. I know Bill Buckmaster broadcasts his show around. It's the #1 talk show in the area. And he's always looking for programs like this. And I know a lot of folks are intimidated or uncomfortable making contact or not quite know how to do that. You all can contact Nina, or in this case, contact me if you want to ask about that. I could help you get on certainly Bill's show or other shows like that. And my other question for you, Nina, is in addition, a lot of folks don't have folks in their clubs that are great writers and don't know necessarily how to write the kind of press release or story you're talking about. I'm wondering if you have some suggestions for where to get that assistance, where there might be templates, for example, to help with just the basics there.
Wow, that's a great question.
I have
Templates I don't know about.
I have a question for Don related to this. Is there a member of District 5500 that has joined the Arizona Press Association that has those contacts? Because in my last state, I was a member of the Press Association in Virginia, and they have, meetings, like monthly meetings you can go to, and that way you meet all the editors and everything. And it gets you friendly with all the editors as a freelance writer.
Interesting.
Nina, I have an idea, and Wanda Bailey's on here too. And she and I we're both in Saddlebrook Rotary. We have 62 members. So we have a little bit more to draw on than some of the smaller clubs. But one of the things we're thinking about or putting together or, strategizing is having a group of, we call it the correspondents out of our club, and get about 5 or 6 people and meet regularly and just have a learning process and share articles and share editorial critiques and, to try to have a group that becomes a good group of, nonprofit journalists and try to become better at it. And I think something like that might be fun, and it might help us get better and do a better job. So, and share the burden of writing stories.
Don, that's an interesting thing we can talk about. The other thing that I want to put out to this group, because I imagine there are some of you who are the comms people for your club, is that I want to put together, because I'm going to be helping Don with communications this next year, is I want to put together a group of contacts of people who are communications people. I'd love it if there were one from every club. And then we could have a steering committee with that. And that way we can help each other, which is much like what I think it was Barb that said, joining Arizona Press Association, we can form our own group within our district who can provide assistance and support, because I mean, my club is Margaret. It's 250 now, something around that. So we're a big club and we have a lot of professional expertise in there. And clubs with 60, 70 can provide that kind of support or backup for the smaller clubs who have a good story to tell. But you need to have a good story to tell. And the only people who can figure that out are you, who are within that club, to again look for the hook of what makes it newsworthy. So do I have any volunteers here? Or I will put my email up. Any of you who are into communications, would you get in touch with me? Because I do want to put together a team for Dawn beginning in July that can be focused on this. And I'd like as much outreach as possible into clubs. So I'm going to chat. Zoom is not one of my greater strengths. I'll just let you know.
I see a number of volunteers. That's exciting. And Joe, your comment I want to follow up on, because it fits also into what the district wants to do. That's why I'm so glad to have Nina spearheading this year, bringing in this kind of expertise to meet the club's needs. And one of them has been continuing to add learning sessions and even specific topic ones. So the idea you're talking about, for example, bringing folks from the clubs together for some assistance just with how to write these press releases, et cetera. We could set that up as just a webinar available to all members at any one time. And get with your group. If you want to schedule something like that, put it on for members, contact me and we can make something like that happen very easily.
And I'm pleased with how many people who said they're interested. I just posted my email. Do me a favor, because I don't know that I'm going to have access to the chat after this is over. Would you just send me an email and let me know what club you're in and your interest and your contact information? And then this summer we'll start getting in touch. Anything else?
I have a dumb question. I'm not sure it's appropriate for this session, but when I think about communications, I worry about internal communications. How do we write emails and newsletters and weekly bulletins, or what is the best way to communicate with our members so they stay engaged and also that they will actually read what we put out? Because sometimes we don't do it effectively, and maybe it's too much content or not the right content. And so is that something that we can work on as part of communications, or is that a different committee? Maybe Dawn can answer that. I don't know.
Great question that I assume is directed to Nina.
I hadn't thought about that, Wanda, but I think it really could fit within this, because people who are doing external communications are probably doing helping with the internal communications, or can review them and help strengthen them, because there's nobody who can't do it better. And I also might argue that in doing that, or comment that in doing that, it follows the same rules. Why does somebody care? How do you make them care? What's the hook? And are you doing something now within your club? You have fudgier rules. You can say, hey, we need your help. We have a project, come sign up. But even within that, using the we need your help, which is okay internally, make the ask in a way that they're going to find something that interests them, spark their interest, spark their curiosity, spark their sense of community, something that's going to make them want to read. In newspaper talk, it's the lead. Not even the headline. The headline helps, but it's the lead, LEDE. And it is the first sentence. What is it that draws the person in to want to read the second sentence? And then the third. And internally, it's the same thing, because there's so much going on in different clubs. so many things people have to deal with, not to mention their own lives and families and whatever. It's how do you do something that sparks their desire to make a difference and to become part?
Thank you. Yes.
I was going to add that there's a lot of current research being done on the change in reading styles and writing styles that are going on, especially since social media has occurred. And there's been dramatic changes in what people are willing to spend their time reading and how many seconds you have to catch their attention and so forth. And this would be so good for everyone to have a seminar or, some type of presentation on this for our communication skills, just in the workplace or with our clubs. It would be very valuable to people.
You're right. The rules, it's also different. I mean, grammar, oh my God. The grammar rules have changed. Mrs. Nadowitz would have a fit with what's going on some of the grammar. My 10th grade English teacher who really hammered it in for us. And that's why I'm really a good grammarian in both English and Spanish. But the rules have changed, and it's how do you hook people in? But as an old schooler, I still argue that good grammar is important and that you want to spell things right. You want to say it the right way. We are a professional club. And I think what we put out needs to be professional. It needs to be grammatical. It needs to be proper. But we also need to know that when we need to write lighter. When you're writing for Facebook, you don't write a treatise. You have to boil things down into a sentence or two. Somebody had their hand up. Was that you?
I was sort of, thank you. I was going to make a comment on this, and it goes back to like kind of what Wanda was talking about with club communication. We've got a newsletter and a bulletin, and then we do a little meeting summary of that. And I'm wondering if, there's like reader fatigue about, oh, here's another email coming up. But there's so much information to share. And if we put it out once, everybody forgets it or skims over it and doesn't read it. So trying to hammer it, well, not hammer it into people because that's the wrong term, but trying to get them interested in reading every single one of those pieces of literature, it gets to be a challenge because there's so much repetitiveness in there. And then, at the meeting you stand up and say, everybody knows what's going on this weekend, and half of them kind of look like deer in the headlights, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's the way that it's written, if it's too long, if and not concise enough, or if it's confusing and misunderstanding, or because the data that Joe has given me over the last little while, and from the Saddlebrook Club, is that like 91% of or 85% of people actually open the email for the bulletin, right? It's a high percentage.
They do. Okay.
And I just don't know if repetitiveness is good or bad. And maybe that's an individual choice.
It can be. You raise a really good point about overload. And some of that is you have to look within your own club at what the communications are like. Because yes, if you are constantly being hit by that, and then they're getting hit by everything else that's coming into their club with communications, it can be an overload. So that may be something to work with your communications person and your president to know what's going out, and for the communications person to know what's going out by other people so that you're not overloading. Repetition done right can be very effective. Which means, and again, I go back, I'm sorry, it sounds like a broken record, but a good lead, the hook, something at the top that makes them want to read more. And then it can be just a reminder with, again, the information. I would think that probably having a fuller piece the first time you send out information about something coming up that you want your club members to know about, you give a fuller understanding. The second time, you just have a headline or a lead sentence, and then the who, what, when, where, why, just in bullet points. I'm really big on bullet points as reminders. So I think the question you ask is being very sensitive to members and their time, and also for your own needs of having people actually pay attention.
Yeah, we've done the odd thing with bullet points with a link, at the end of that bullet point to learn more.
Right.
So sort of an
That's
individual choice there.
great.
So the late, excuse me, the latest thing in the media, because people's attention spans are shorter, is that no sentence should go over 7 words. So if you look at your communication in your newsletters and website and wherever the communication is going, if you use that rule, it's going to guide you that maybe someone's using too many words to get the message across.
What
That's
a
where
wonderful
acronyms come in
point.
handy.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the 7 words, but it's a great point. Look, back in, again, in the dark ages, when I was on K-Gun, when you were putting together a 1.5-minute story, you'd have a 20-second soundbite and maybe another 30-second soundbite, and then the reporter voice tying it all together. By the time I stopped, that was when I started. By the time 9 years later, when I left the business, it was down to maybe an 18-second soundbite, probably a 12, because the attention spans, the attention span is that much, and it must be absolutely that much worse now. When you just look at, when you're writing texts, see you later, the letter C, the letter U, LTR, and that's it. So yeah, it's a whole different form of communication.
Don't you think that if you had an article, and so you had, I don't know, just say 75 or 100 words or 75 words, or you had a picture, when somebody looks at that block of news, I think they're going to see the picture first.
If you can add a visual, that's a really good point. Thank you, Joe. If in your news release, if you can have a picture or two, or in your outreach to print media, whatever you send out, if you can have a picture with a good caption, so that right under the picture is a caption of what it is that relates to why they should care. Kid gets first own book, or whatever it is that you're doing, something that draws them in. What you want to do is get them drawn in to reading the second sentence, and then the third sentence. And summary at the end in bullet points, and don't forget a contact person who can be reached. Anybody else? Okay.
If there aren't questions, I want to pose one to the group, kind of related to what's come up before that John mentioned about internal communications. And this is a question about communications from the district out to all of you, to the members. And right now we have the Glance, which comes out twice a month, that provides information, pieces, things upcoming, et cetera, other keys. We have the Club Showcase once a month, which talks primarily about things that have already happened. And then what kind of morphed without realizing it is multiple emails that go out about fundraisers and upcoming events. And we get different responses about this. A lot of times folks say they're too long, they don't read them. Or what do some folks say? A lot of the responses are just TLDR, which I've heard now folks respond to emails with TLDR, which stands for too long didn't read.
Oh,
of course, I hear that as too lazy didn't read, but I can't change everybody. So my question for you all is, what do you do you like those? Or what kind of changes would you think be more effective? What do you want to see? Nina and I have been discussing this, and you won't offend me in any way with any of those. I didn't create them. As I told Nina, I'm happy to blow everything up and do what works.
I have a point. In the past, I've done off and on all kinds of stuff in the last several years. And at one period, I was doing the newsletter. I think I was the club president at the same time. And, the district wanted articles for one of those particular, I don't know what they called it at the time, but so you had to format your article into a structure that the district had. And what I did, I put the district, that contact on my distribution list. And I thought, well, I don't have to sit around and write another article or format it. I'll just send them everything we're doing. But that was rejected, because they wanted it formatted. And what my comment is, it takes time to stop and reformat an article for the district when you're already doing it in a different format. Isn't it possible that we can share our activities and newsletter in some way and let the district pick the articles they want to feature rather than us have to stop and redo it? I know it doesn't, I'm not complaining. I'm just explaining that it slowed me down and having time to, I didn't submit any because I was busy and I had it all there anyway in our newsletter. And so I didn't take the time to reformat it. I said, well, they've got the information, but they don't want to take the time to edit it.
Well, Don and I can look at the formatting issue because it's a valid concern, but I also see from their perspective, it makes it easier for them.
Well, I see that, yes.
But I would really love to see clubs do, and that's something Don and I will talk about, is be more circumspect of what you send to the district for the district newsletters, whatever format they end up taking, because if I'm editing that, which I'm hoping I'm not doing, but if I'm editing that, if I get 50 pieces, if you send me your newsletter and it has four stories in it, I don't want to have to pick which is the most important story, and I'm not going to print 4 from your club. So it is helpful if you, as a club, when you're submitting something, you decide what's the most important thing that you want to communicate. And that's the other thing I didn't talk as much about, but who is your audience? It's different with every medium you're working with. If you're reaching and trying to get into the district's newsletter, your audience is a bunch of other Rotarians. And you either want to say, hey, look what we're doing, or you want to say, hey, we're doing this and we want you to help, or, hey, we're doing this, come join us and you'll get this out of it. So knowing what your audience, who your audience is.
So
pick
in
the thing
Don,
that's most important and send that. And if you can rewrite it, I don't know whether we will have a format, but if you can rewrite it so that it is geared that way to Rotarians, you always want to know your audience.
and Don, a lot of the things that are posted on the District 5500 for events, it's all written in third person. So if they include a direct person quote from someone involved with that event, say it's a youth event and you interview a parent about receiving the scholarship money for their child, then that makes it so much more human and so much more alive.
Jennifer,
Great comment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You asked that question as though we have a news staff at the district, and we do not.
Okay.
It is you all who, as Joe was saying, it's you all who are writing these or providing whatever it is we might decide to do in whatever form. So, those of us here, we're the ones putting this together. That's why I'm asking you all to give some thought to, how do you want to receive it? What will you look at in terms of a newsletter?
We just lost your audio, Don.
And as Nina said, there is no format right now. We'll be talking about that. We know it needs to be brief and address all the keys that Nina talked about. But like I said, right now we have the opportunity to create these types of communications that members want to read, that they will read, and that are useful for you and for the district to get the information out.
Yeah, but Jennifer, the point is really a solid one about quotes, because sorry, I go back to the hook. Repeat. Going back to the hook, having a human interest, having a mother say, there's no way my child could have gone to camp without this, or it changed our lives, or whatever it is that you're doing, you want to, a direct quote is powerful. And it looks like they're closing out our room. So thank you all. I hope you found this helpful. You have my email, so send me an email. Let me know what club you're in. And let's start getting a group together that can try and address these issues. Bye.
Can I make one more
Thank you.
comment? Oh,
And a co-host.
That's okay.
As long
I'm
as you
just-
got it done, it doesn't matter who does it. Yeah.
No, I just didn't know if there was a quirk in the system or whatever, but that's okay, just so you know.
Yeah.
So Bob has it.
Okay.
thank you, Leo, for all of your amazing hard work
Oh, no problem.
on this. You were just incredible.
Well, I just got to sit here and watch the Liverpool soccer match, while you guys did all the work.
Well, there you go. Good for you. I'm glad it worked out.
There were a few people that got booted out or came late, but for the most part, it was pretty easy work.
He was really just watching the live stream of the coronation of King Charles.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
sure.
That
it's so
no, that
fast.
was at 5 o'clock this morning.
We'll probably
good.
reruns.
Tell me all about it. Hey, Leo.
Yes. Well, my family, I'm a first generation English, so I had to watch that. Well, don't think everybody's back yet, but
I'm excited that people came. This is a different way of doing a club assembly, so I hope it met people's needs and made some sense. I think we're waiting for
yeah, Dawn should be in
Don
any
to
second.
come in,
Yeah.
but I just think it's great that this many people came. I think by doing it this way, we might even have more attendance next year. So
Yeah.
spread the
Yeah.
word.
We found that out in my old district during COVID. We did 2 assemblies by Zoom. In fact, I did our conference by Zoom for 500 people.
Wow.
And but we continued to do the Zooms even for assemblies, even when we were doing them in person, because we like doing it in person too. You do get a little different, capability. But
I think, Leo, what's impressive is if you look, I mean, we started out with 80 something and we still have 73 people who are still here.
that's right. They're not necessarily the same 73, but
But the numbers, it's impressive.
yeah, it stayed pretty consistent. Yeah, we had 37, 21, and 20 for these last sessions. So
That's great. Well, I know it is coming up on lunchtime, and
There's
folks
Don.
that have sat through all 3 probably need a restroom break. So let me, wrapping up the way I started by thanking, first of all of our facilitators, just tremendous programs. I appreciate all the work that went in. I hope you all enjoyed it, learned some things, and got some great tips. I know a lot of them did provide their contact information for you. I will offer, if later on you want to get in contact with one of them, have a question and forget that, feel free to email me and I'll connect you and take care of that. Again, I also want to thank Kasha for handling the registration and finding a way for all of us to be here, and Leo for making it all work. It's running things behind the scenes, and here was just tremendous. And I really appreciate his masterful management of Zoom.
my pleasure.
Again, I want to thank all of you for your time, and really, this is Rotary. This is our commitment to getting more effective at delivering, to being of service in the community. I heard a great comment. I'm actually up in Phoenix at the moment at the District 5495 conference. And someone mentioned yesterday, talked about the fact that issues come up in clubs and conflicts come up in clubs. And his response to that is, if your club's having conflicts, that means you're not busy enough. And I think everyone here is busy looking at more and more ways to be of service and deliver service. So with that, I want to thank you all for doing that. As I said in the beginning, our focus next year is creating hope in the world. And I hope this makes you more effective at doing that and helping to change lives. So with that, thank you all very much and wish you a great weekend. And we are
Don.
finished.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great programs.